Daniel Carter never imagined his life would unravel the way it had. Once a devoted husband and hardworking carpenter, he now found himself a widowed single father, struggling to balance the demands of raising his 7-year-old daughter, Emily, with the endless tide of bills, late nights, and responsibilities that seemed to pile up faster than he could manage. The house he and his late wife had bought together, once filled with laughter and love, now felt heavy and hollow, and the silence at night pressed down on him like a weight he could not shake. Determined not to lose it, he came up with the only solution he could think of, renting out the spare bedroom. The advertisement was simple, almost desperate: room for rent. Affordable. Quiet neighborhood. Single dad with child. He didn't expect much, but one sunny afternoon a soft knock on the door changed everything. Standing on the porch was Sophie, a young woman with warm brown eyes, wearing jeans and a plain sweater, her expression equal parts hopeful and nervous. She introduced herself as a first-year college student looking for a place near campus, and there was something about her tone, polite, humble, genuine, that immediately set her apart. Daniel showed her the small room. It wasn't much, just a bed, a desk, and a window with a view of the street, but to Sophie it seemed to be exactly what she was looking for, and with a bright smile she declared it perfect. Despite sensing an air of quiet refinement in the way she carried herself, Daniel pushed away the thought and agreed to let her stay when she promised to pay rent on time and even help around the house. That evening Sophie returned with 2 suitcases and a grateful smile, and Emily, shyly peeking from behind her father's leg, studied the newcomer with wide eyes until Sophie crouched down, sketched a funny little doodle on a napkin, and handed it to her, winning the child's giggles instantly. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a flicker of warmth return to the house, unaware that Sophie was carrying a secret that could change their lives. She wasn't just another student in need of shelter, but the daughter of Richard Hayes, a powerful millionaire known throughout the city, and she had come here seeking something money could never buy: freedom, normalcy, and a place where she could simply belong. Within weeks of Sophie's arrival, the Carter household began to feel different, as though a gentle light had returned to corners that had long been dimmed by grief and worry, and it was not lost on Daniel how naturally Sophie had blended into their lives, never behaving like a guest but rather like someone who belonged there all along. She washed dishes without being asked, folded laundry while humming softly, and often sat with Emily at the kitchen table, patiently helping her with math, homework, or listening to her chatter about school, and the little girl, who had grown used to her father's tired silences, seemed suddenly brighter, her laughter echoing through the house again. Daniel, though grateful, kept his guard up, for he was not used to accepting help, yet each evening when he saw Sophie kneeling on the floor playing board games with Emily or reading her bedtime stories with animated voices, he felt a quiet tug at his heart that both warmed and unsettled him. Sophie, for her part, was discovering something she had never known before: normalcy, for while her childhood had been one of private tutors, bodyguards, and glittering galas, never once had she been part of such simple routines: sharing spaghetti at a modest dinner table, folding clothes fresh from the dryer, or sitting in the backyard as Emily ran barefoot chasing fireflies. These moments, mundane to some, were treasures to Sophie, and she began to cherish the safety and warmth they offered more than the luxury of her father's mansion. One Friday evening, she walked into the kitchen to find Daniel hunched over a pile of bills, his face etched with exhaustion, and though she hesitated, she offered to earn extra money tutoring neighborhood kids and contribute it toward the house. Daniel looked at her in surprise, touched yet hesitant, reminding her she was already paying rent, but Sophie insisted with quiet determination, saying she wanted to give something back for the kindness of being welcomed into their home. He had no words, only a deep well of gratitude, and that night as he tucked Emily into bed, he realized the house no longer felt like it was just his and Emily's, it was slowly becoming theirs. But still, unanswered questions lingered in his mind, for Sophie never spoke about her family, and Daniel, though respectful of her privacy, couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something much bigger than a college student's struggles. As the months passed, Sophie's double life grew more difficult to hide, for while she cherished the simple rhythm of mornings with Emily and quiet dinners with Daniel, the outside world of her past kept tugging at her, usually in the form of insistent phone calls from her father, who begged her to come back, warning her that she was too vulnerable living among strangers, though she reassured him with firm yet loving words. Sophie knew she was balancing on a fragile line, and one slip could reveal everything. One afternoon, the truth nearly slipped when Emily, giggling as she played with Sophie's phone, stumbled upon a gallery of glossy photographs showing Sophie in elegant dresses at charity galas, posing beside her father at business events, or vacationing at places far too luxurious for any ordinary student, and rushing to her father, she exclaimed, "Daddy, look, Sophie's a princess." Daniel, startled, glanced at the images before Sophie quickly snatched the phone, her cheeks flushed crimson, and though he could have demanded answers, he chose kindness instead, telling her she owed him no explanations, though in his heart, suspicion quietly bloomed. That evening, while Sophie tried to focus on her coursework, Daniel found himself replaying the moment, noticing details he had ignored before, the poise in the way she spoke, the quality of her clothes despite their simplicity, and the air of quiet grace that seemed almost out of place in their modest home, yet he held his silence, unwilling to risk pushing her away. The secret cracked further one evening when a sleek black car pulled up outside the house, and a man in a pressed suit knocked firmly on the door. Daniel, protective by nature, answered with suspicion, his carpenter's hands tightening as the man introduced himself as Mr. Gray, a chauffeur sent by Sophie's father to ensure her well-being. Shock rippled through Daniel as Sophie rushed forward, begging the man to leave before her father learned her exact whereabouts, her voice desperate and trembling, and Daniel's heart twisted with confusion, torn between wanting to demand the truth and wanting to shield her from whatever past she was fleeing. For the first time, Daniel realized that Sophie was not just a mysterious student with a quiet past, but someone carrying a burden heavy enough to make her run from the world she came from, and he began to fear that her secret, whatever it was, might soon shatter the fragile peace they had built together. That night, after Mr. Gray's sudden visit, Sophie knew she could no longer hide behind half-truths and silence, so once Emily had gone to bed, she sat with Daniel at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she confessed everything, the mansion she had grown up in, the fortune her father had built, and the carefully constructed world of wealth and privilege she had walked away from because it suffocated her. Leaving her yearning for something real, she admitted she had come here to live like an ordinary girl, to be seen for herself rather than her father's money, and her eyes shimmered with tears as she whispered that the moments with him and Emily had been the happiest of her life. Daniel listened quietly, his broad shoulders tense, his expression unreadable, and when she finished, silence pressed heavy between them until at last he leaned back with a weary sigh, telling her that while he wished she had trusted him sooner, none of it changed the person she had been in this house, the kind young woman who had helped his daughter laugh again, who had carried burdens with him without asking for anything in return, and who had turned a lonely house back into a home. Sophie broke down then, covering her face with her hands, until Daniel reached across the table and gently touched her arm, reassuring her that her secret didn't erase the bond they had built. Over the following weeks, Sophie's father eventually came to visit, cautious and skeptical, but even he couldn't ignore the glow in his daughter's eyes or the way Emily clung to her hand, and slowly he came to understand that Sophie had found a family in this modest home, something his wealth could never provide. Though life didn't magically become easy, the air was lighter, the trust stronger, and Daniel realized that what began as a desperate decision to rent out a spare room had given him more than financial relief, it had given him a partner in Sophie, a friend, and perhaps, in time, something deeper, while Emily had gained the warmth of a sisterly figure she adored. And as seasons changed, the three of them grew into a family not bound by money or blood, but by the simple, unshakable truth that love and belonging could be found in the most unexpected places.